You hear it all the time in the superheated environment of American politics. It's a slogan, a battle cry, a foundational belief for millions. America is a Christian nation. The argument seems simple. The majority of the people who settled the colonies were Christian. The majority of the country today identifies as Christian. And surely, the founding fathers, those revered figures in powdered wigs, were pious men who built this nation on the rock of their biblical faith. This entire debate, for many, is a settled issue. This is a Christian nation, period. But what if I told you that this idea is historically profoundly complicated? What if I told you that many of the key founding fathers, the intellectual architects of the America we know, were not Orthodox Christians as we would understand the term today? What if I told you they were deeply skeptical of organized religion, that they questioned the divinity of Christ, the Trinity, and the miracles of the Bible? What if they intentionally built a government not on Christian doctrine, but on secular Enlightenment ideals? And what if I told you the United States, in one of its earliest treaties, unanimously ratified by the Senate, officially declared to the world that it was not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion? Today, we are cutting through the modern political slogans to ask one of the most contentious questions in American history: what did the founding fathers actually believe? And did they intend to create a Christian nation? To understand this debate, we have to first understand the profound difference between theism, the belief in a personal, interventionist God who answers prayers and reveals himself through scripture, and deism, the dominant philosophy of the 18th century intellectual elite. Deism is the belief in a watchmaker God. A deist believed that a rational, creator God did exist. He designed the universe with perfect natural laws, like a watchmaker building an intricate clock. But once he wound it up, he set it on the table and let it run. This God does not intervene. He does not perform miracles. He does not reveal himself through special revelation like the Bible or the Quran. The only way to know this God, a deist argued, was through reason, logic, and the observation of the natural world. For them, the ultimate scripture was the perfect machine of the cosmos. This was the intellectual air that the founding fathers breathed, and many of them, especially the key architects, were textbook deists, or at least heavily influenced by it. Let's take the most famous example, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson was the man who wrote the Declaration of Independence, which appeals not to Jesus or the God of the Bible, but to the laws of nature and of nature's God, a classic deistic phrase. Jefferson was technically a member of an Episcopal church, but his private beliefs were anything but orthodox. He was profoundly skeptical of the supernatural. He did not believe in the divinity of Christ, the resurrection, or the miracles. In fact, he was so convinced the core message of Jesus was a simple, rational, moral code that had been corrupted by his later followers that he literally took a razor blade to the New Testament. He physically cut out every single verse that he considered irrational or supernatural. No water into wine. No walking on water. No resurrection. The resulting book, The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth, or the Jefferson Bible, ends with the body of Jesus being laid in the tomb. Period. This was the man who wrote the Declaration of Independence. Or what about Benjamin Franklin? In his autobiography, Franklin is explicit about his beliefs. He described his conversion to deism as a young man. He wrote, "I soon became a thorough deist, while he believed in a creator and in the importance of virtue. He was deeply skeptical of all organized religions, which he saw as mostly competing systems for power." When asked to support a new church building in Philadelphia, he famously said he would give money, but only on the condition that the building be available for all sects, and that, even if the Mufti of Constantinople were to send a missionary to preach Mohammedanism to us, he would find a pulpit at his service. This is not the statement of a man building a Christian nation. This is the statement of a radical pluralist. Even George Washington, while far more private about his faith, consistently used deistic language. In his public addresses and private letters, he refers over 200 times to providence, the great architect, the Almighty, or the author of the universe. He almost never uses the name Jesus Christ. Historians note he was a regular churchgoer, but also that he regularly and pointedly refused to take communion, a central rite of the Christian faith. This was a man who believed in a divine hand, but he was not an orthodox evangelical as we would know him today. The most important figure, however, was James Madison, the father of the Constitution. Madison was arguably the most dedicated to a purely secular government. In his memorial and remonstrance against religious assessments, he argued fiercely against a bill in Virginia that would have collected a small tax to support all Christian churches. Madison argued that forcing any citizen to pay any money to any religion was an act of tyranny. He believed that mixing religion and government corrupted both, turning religion into a tool of the state and weakening its spiritual purity. Now, this is a crucial point, and it's where the debate gets interesting. Not all founders were deists. Many, like Samuel Adams, John Jay, and Patrick "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" Henry, were deeply, conventionally, and passionately Christian. The country was full of them. So, this wasn't a nation of deists, but here is the key. When it came time to write the founding documents, the secular deistic model won. Why? Because the founders, both the deists and the more pious, had just fought a war against a king who was the head of an official, state-sponsored church, the Church of England. They had seen how state religions in Europe had led to centuries of persecution, bloodshed, and war. Their goal was to create a system that would prevent that from ever happening in America. The very structure of the Constitution is a testament to this. There is no mention of God, Jesus, or Christianity in the entire document. The only time religion is mentioned is in Article VI, which states that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. This was revolutionary. It meant that a person's faith or lack of it could not legally be used to bar them from holding power. This was immediately followed by the First Amendment, which famously states, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." They were creating a secular government, not because they were anti-religion, but because they believed the only way to protect all religion was to ensure the government favored no religion. Perhaps the most stunningly clear piece of evidence from this era comes not from a private letter, but from an official, legally binding document, unanimously ratified by the United States Senate. In 1797, the Senate ratified the Treaty of Tripoli, a document designed to ensure peace with the Muslim states of North Africa. And Article 11 of that treaty, signed by President John Adams, contains this unbelievable sentence: "As the government of the United States of America is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries, not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion." This was the official, legal, and international position of the United States government, just a decade after the Constitution was signed. So, if the founding was so explicitly secular, where did the powerful Christian nation idea come from? It was largely a product of the 19th century, as the country was swept by massive waves of religious revivals, known as the Second Great Awakening. A new generation of evangelical leaders began to retroactively frame the founding of America in more pious, biblical terms. They began to mythologize the founders, sanding off their rough, deistic edges and recasting them as modern, born-again Christians. This narrative was useful. It helped create a unified national identity, and it was a powerful tool in political and cultural debates, such as the fight over slavery. This idea got a second, massive boost in the 1950s. During the height of the Cold War, America sought to draw a sharp, moral line between itself and the officially godless communism of the Soviet Union. It was in this era the 1950s, that "In God We Trust" was added to all paper currency. It was in 1954 that "Under God" was inserted into the Pledge of Allegiance. This fusion of American patriotism with public piety cemented the Christian nation idea in the modern consciousness. So, when we return to our original question, we find a deeply complex answer. Was America founded by people who were, by and large, culturally Christian? Yes, absolutely. But was the government they designed, the Constitution they wrote, intended to be a Christian nation in a theological or doctrinal sense? The historical evidence from the founders' own words, their private beliefs, and their public legal documents overwhelmingly suggests the answer is no. They were complex, brilliant, and often contradictory. But they were not, by and large, the 21st century evangelicals they are often portrayed to be. They were men of the Enlightenment who, in a stroke of genius, created a secular republic that would, for the first time, allow religious belief to flourish free from the corrupting influence of government power. And this brings us to the central debate, the one I want to leave with you. Does the original intent of a few dozen men from 250 years ago matter more than the cultural and religious identity the nation has evolved into? Is the Christian nation idea a dangerous historical myth that threatens the pluralism the founders fought for? Or is it a living, breathing description of a cultural truth? A nation whose morals, holidays, and identity are still overwhelmingly shaped by a Christian heritage, regardless of what a handful of deists wrote in a treaty. Let me know your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. This is one of the most important conversations in America, and it deserves to be had with history, not just with headlines. Thanks for watching.